welcome to this recording of our webinar on how to find a Kita in Berlin. My name is Lisa. If you've been a member for a while, you may already know me. We may have met in person. For those who haven't, I am the co-founder of Kietzee. I lived abroad for quite a while before returning to Germany and having my 2 kids in Berlin. And that's really when the trouble started. Living abroad, I always thought the German system was so great for families, and I think in a lot of ways it is. But I also realized when we got here that there's actually a lot of hurdles in terms of accessing all the great benefits and resources that are provided for families living in Germany. And that was really why my husband and I decided to create Kietzee as a one-stop shop for families and international families, specifically to have access for everything that they need to know when having a baby in Berlin. Like I mentioned, if you've been a member for a while, you will have already discovered the articles on our platform. We have them organized for members in a timeline. So every month we tell you what topics you should be looking into so that you can secure your spot at your preferred hospital or your birthing center, find a midwife, find a pediatrician, learn how the postpartum period works and where you can get more support if you need it, etc., etc. Specific to this topic, we also have collected over 200 reviews for Kitas all over Berlin from other parents to help you in your decision-making process. We also give you access to lots of professionals who work with families, kids, and parents in Berlin and online if you need additional support. And we provide some perks from our partners as well, many of which are small businesses in Berlin run by parents. Perhaps you have already attended one of our community events. You can see our Expecting Parents event from early in 2024 on this picture. So our community is here to support new and expecting parents in Berlin and help them on their journey to parenthood and through parenthood. It's a really friendly, safe space for you to connect with other new and expecting parents near you, to ask your questions in our online community, to maybe score some secondhand items from some of the members whose kids have already outgrown them. You can join our lunch and learns where our partners and professionals share information around topics such as baby paperwork or also baby sleep. And lastly, our monthly in-person events are a really great way to connect with other people living near you and going through, the same questions and challenges that you might be experiencing, and who understand exactly what you're going through, the excitement, and also some of the challenges. So specific to Kita Search, we have written with some of our partners over 30 articles going into all the details of Kita Search. So beginning from where do I even start? How does the system work? Into, okay, now I have written my applications. How do I do the follow-up? Or once accepted into a Kita, how can I prepare for my child starting there, which is obviously a very big transition period for the whole family. And you can check all of these out on our platform. I will link a copy of this presentation and also the links in it. If you have any questions or want a PDF copy, you can email me anytime. And I also wanted to point out some of the experts who are here to help you further. So I'm going to give you a big overview of how the system works on the step-by-step approach of securing a Kita spot in Berlin. And then if you need additional help, you can reach out to our partners. Elodie is our go-to person, for example, for Kita Search one-on-one. If you need personal assistance, she can also help you to apply and solve any issues that you might be experiencing with your Kita Gutschein. Natalie in the middle can help you with questions around what type of daycare is actually right for our family and for our child. And then on the right, we have Lauren, who is actually a Kita teacher and Erzieherin here in Berlin at a bilingual international school. And she can help you prepare for the settling in period called called Eingewöhnung in German. Beforehand, or if you're experiencing challenges while going through the Eingewöhnung, she can help you as well as with any behavioral challenges that you might be experiencing with a slightly older child, tantrums, biting, hitting, such things. She's your person. We have a free newsletter. You obviously are already in at least the free trial period or a member of our site, so you're all set on that front. So why are we even doing this webinar? You may have heard or already experienced firsthand by now that the Kita search process in Berlin is super intransparent, frustrating, and confusing. Some other German cities have central allocation systems which make it easier for parents to go through this process. There is no such thing in Berlin, which means that lots of parents apply to lots of Kitas. The families are overwhelmed and overworked, and so are the Kitas as well. But I have found that by understanding the system and knowing what you have to do when, you will manage and you can tackle this whole process. It is always a good idea to start early, ideally even before your baby is born, if you're already in Berlin, because you will have more time before the baby is there. You will have other and better things to do once the baby is born than making your Kita list, so that's something that you can easily do beforehand. Be organized, follow the process, and then be persistent with your follow-ups as well after you've sent out your applications. So we're going to run through this process of how to find a Kita in Berlin each and every step of the way. My example here is for a family whose child is maybe not born yet or was maybe just born. But obviously it also applies to families who are moving here with an older child, although the timeline might be a bit more condensed in that case. And you can find an article that also kind of explains the step-by-step process on our platform. Also, as a side note, since I know this varies in different countries and this question always comes up, which is, at what age do kids actually enter the different education stages? So in Berlin, Kita usually starts or can start when the kids are 1 year of age. You can also start later. Kita is not mandatory, but it is recommended that your child does attend it at some point before they enter primary school, which is for most kids at 6, some at 7 years old. So the sort of Kita period for most kids will be 1 year old or thereabouts until they're about 6 years old. Like I mentioned, the key to me for finding a Kita spot in Berlin is understanding how the system works. So the way that Kitas operate is basically on the same schedule as the school year, where their year sort of starts at the end of the summer, early fall. And this is also when they have most of their open spots, simply because the older kids start primary school and open up spots for younger kids to join the Kita. So your best bet for finding a Kita spot in Berlin will be with a start date around August, September, October, maybe going into November, depending on the Kita and how they structure their sort of onboarding process for new kids. You also need to keep in mind that even though your start date at Kita might be, say, August 1st, you need to budget an additional 4 to 6 weeks for the adaptation period, which in German is called Eingewöhnung. So this is something that you need to keep in mind as you're planning your return to work. And you're planning, maybe if you're early enough in the process, you're planning your parental leave, your Elternzeit as well. Kitas have so-called wait lists that they can add you onto as you apply. You may get confirmation that this has happened. So that's the first sort of step in the process. However, Kitas will also close the wait list once they realize that they already have way more families on the list than they can actually offer spots to. And then in terms of the timing, one important note is that most Kitas will ask you to only apply after your child has been born, but there will be some who do expect you who do accept you while you're still expecting. So this is something that's worth checking, but again, most will ask you to wait. Another important factor that you want to know about is that Kitas usually work with a specific concept, and that concept for most Kitas means that they want mixed groups. So say if they have a group of 10 kids, you will likely find that they will want 5 girls and 5 boys in a best case scenario. And then depending on their approach, they will also be looking for a certain age mix, and this can vary a lot. I've seen Kitas that will do, okay, all the 1-year-olds in one group, all the 2-year-olds. There's some Kitas that work with a Krippe approach, which is the little ones 1 through 3 years old. And again, they'll want like a good mix in that age group, or some even go all the way from 1 to 6 years old. And again, they'll want, say, 2 1-year-olds, 2 2-year-olds, etc. Siblings always have preference, so even though a Kita has maybe, say, 20 spots, that doesn't mean they actually have 20 spots for new families. Half or more might actually go to existing families. So this is very frustrating the first time around, but if you decide to have a second child, you will love it. And then last but not least, a question that comes up a lot in Germany, the system works in the way that most daycare providers only accept kids from 1 year of age. So again, this is really important to know as you're planning your Elternzeit and your return to work. It is much harder to find a spot for a child that is not yet 1. So keep this in mind. So building your list is something that you can definitely do before your child is born. And it's a very personal process because what is important to you might differ from what is important to another family. Here are just some of the prompts that I would take to think about what's important to you. So as I mentioned, what age do you want your child to start? 1 year old, or maybe wait a little bit? Completely up to you. Location, most people will look near their house, but you might also consider locations maybe near your office building or other locations where you are on a frequent basis. That might work for you. Every Kita will have a concept that kind of defines how they operate on a day-to-day basis. And this can be some of the bigger concepts such as Waldorf or Montessori, an open concept. It might vary. And if they have a website, you will likely find a section or a document that talks about their concept. This can be a nice way of learning about how they work and letting this flow into your application letter. However, I would also say that the sad truth is that many Kitas lack the resources to kind of satisfactorily implement their concepts. So this is something to keep in mind, and you will get a better feel for that if you are invited to visit the Kita. One of the most important, if not the most important thing to me when considering daycare options are the opening hours. You will find that they vary quite a bit between different Kitas and also different types of daycare facilities, which I'll go into in a minute. And you will find, for example, that some close quite early in the day, and we have this question coming up in the forum from time to time where it's like, we were offered a spot at this Kita, but they close at 3 p.m. every day. Does anyone have experience with that and how it's worked for them? And what I would always say is, think about your work days. What happens for you in the afternoons? Would you miss a lot of meetings or appointments? Would you have to hire a babysitter or a nanny when Kita closes that early? So I think this is one of the most important factors to consider. And then related but a little bit differently is the closing period. So most every Kita has a longer closing period in the summer. This can range from 1 week, which would be amazing for the parents, through 6 weeks I've seen as well, and that's obviously a bit more challenging for working parents. So do pay attention to that and see if at least if it's a longer closing period, they might offer some emergency care at a different facility. Reviews, do ask other people in your neighborhood about a specific kita you're considering and see if they have any experience firsthand with it. You also want to think about what type of kita feels right to you in terms of the size of the kita and how they have structured their age group. And that's, again, I think there's pros and cons to all of this. So it comes down a lot to personal preference. And just some things to keep in mind. For example, if you have a kita that is quite big, 150, 200 kids, that doesn't necessarily mean that the groups are that big. So that's something to keep in mind. And age groups, yeah, it also depends. Like, it's great sometimes for kids to learn from older kids, but it might also be better for them to be in a more calm environment. So we go into all of these factors in the article that I've linked here. And then finally, there can be other considerations such as vegan or vegetarian food. Languages obviously is a big topic in the international community, and I'll get back on to that topic in a moment. And then if your child has special needs, you need to make sure that the kita has integration teachers available. One important piece of information to fully understand the system is that there's actually 3 types of childcare, daycare facilities on offer in Berlin. So what we mostly talk about is the kitas, but there's actually 2 other types as well. The second one being a Tagesmutter. So this is a professional qualified childminder who takes care of kids on a much smaller scale. So depending on their certification, they can take care of between 3 and 5 kids, and they may actually do so in their own home, or they might rent a space for this. So this is a much more kind of family-like environment. It's very small. It's very sort of protected for the little ones, because this type of child care is only available up until the age of 3, and then they would have to switch to a kita afterwards. And then lastly, there's also a concept called Kinderladen. You may also hear the term Elterninitiative, parent initiative, which basically mean the same thing, which is that it's a kita that was founded and is still run by the parents, by the families who attend the kita. And so I've heard wonderful things about these kinds of initiatives, because it allows you to really have a say in the structure and the organization of the kita. But it also means that you have to contribute a significant number of hours each week to help run the kita. And this can range from sort of cooking, cleaning, doing small repairs, organizing festivities, parties, excursions, to, updating the website, running the wait list, interviewing new families. There's a lot of different things that need to be taken care of when running a kita, and in these kinds of initiatives, it's the parents doing so. And you can expect to spend up to 15 hours per week doing these chores at the kita. So you need to consider whether that's right for your family, your work setup, etc. And then bilingual and private kitas. So there are a lot of bilingual kitas in Berlin, of all sorts of combinations. There's a lot of combinations, German with English, with Spanish, French. There's some Russian ones. There's even a Czech one that I've heard about. So there's different language combinations there. And you need to check them out and see what the requirements are. For example, do all the languages need to be spoken at home? How does it work? What do they expect? It can be difficult to get a spot, but I would say it's not so much more difficult than getting a spot at a German kita. If you are considering a German kita for your child, for your international child, there's a great article written by Lauren, who I introduced in the beginning, that you might want to check out. And then we always get the question too, if there are private kitas where the process might be a little less painful, I guess? The answer is there is a few, not a whole lot, but most of them are bilingual English-German, and they range in fees from sort of 200 euros to 1500, I think, is the most expensive one per month that I have come across. And many of them are actually affiliated with international schools as well, if that's something that's already on your mind for your child. So, and in terms of the process, I've heard mixed things. It may not necessarily be so much easier to find a spot there, but you might get lucky. Okay, so now you have your list of kitas that you want to apply for. Now, what do you actually do? And our approach is basically you do whatever the kita tells you to do. I know there's other platforms who follow a more like one size fits all approach. Personally, I don't think that works very well because of the way that the system is set up. So my recommendation is always to check what the kita wants you to do. So if they want you to call, you call. If they want you to come in person, that's what you do. If they want you to send something in the mail, you do that. Also, a word about Kita Navigator, which is the tool provided by the city, which is not always very up to date. It might tell you information that's not actually correct, especially as it comes to spots that may or may not be open at a kita. So I wouldn't rely on that type of information. However, if a kita does tell you to apply through the navigator, that's what you'll do, and I would reserve that process for the kitas that specifically ask you to do that. Otherwise, I will go do their own process through their website or calling or whatever it might be. And I've linked here our most popular blog article, which talks about what type of information you want to include in your application, and also a sample letter to go with it. So now that you've applied for a bunch of kitas, you may get some feedback telling you that you've been put on the wait list, but either way, you'll definitely want to follow up. So you wait a little bit, and then as the year progresses, you want to check in with them, tell them you're still interested, ask them what their process looks like, when will they be allocating their spots. You can also give them an update on your Kita Gutschein status, which we'll talk about in a minute. So this is really important so that they know you want to stay on their list and they can contact you if and when they do have open spots. Kita Gutschein. The most important information to take away here is that you do not need the Kita Gutschein to start applying for kitas. You want to start applying for kitas before or while you're applying for the Kita Gutschein. Do not wait. You can apply as early as 9 months before your desired start date. And you should do it a minimum of 2 months before, because it takes them sort of between 4 and 8 weeks to actually get the Gutschein to you, which is what will allow you to sign a contract with the kita that has accepted you. And the second most important information to take away here is that there's different types of Gutscheins, vouchers, which refer to the number of hours that you are entitled to send your child each day. Everyone is entitled, with a child over the age of 1, is entitled to a 5 to 7 hour voucher, and you can get that one pretty quickly. However, if you can, you do definitely want to apply for a 7 to 9 hour voucher, because it tends to be more popular with the kitas, simply because they will receive more money from the city for this particular spot. That does not mean, however, that your child actually has to be at kita for 7 to 9 hours each day. If you want to pick them up early, the kita will likely be very happy about that. They will be receiving the money, and you can pick up whenever you like. So if you can get the 7 to 9 hour voucher, you will need to provide some evidence from your employer or from your university, whatever your sort of full-time setup is, to prove that you need it in order so that somebody is taking care of your child. And we have an article that kind of runs through all these different scenarios, as well as the second article that then runs you through the application process screen by screen. Okay, so what else do you want to keep in mind? You want to actually keep track of your application for yourself so that you know where you stand with each Kita that's on your list. But also, if ever you need to reach out to the Jugendamt, which is the official office responsible for the Gutscheins and for Kita relations, if ever you want to ask them for help, they will likely ask you for proof that you have applied to a certain number of Kitas and still need their help. You also should be aware that many spots are assigned quite last minute, which is super frustrating as you're sort of anticipating and planning your return to work. You may not find out until May or June that your child has a spot for August, which is very last minute, but it's just something to be aware of, and it might make you feel a little more calm about the process. If you have an older child especially, there's a few sites where you can proactively check for open spots, and I've linked the article here. And then once again, once your child starts, the Eingewöhnung still takes 4 to 6 weeks usually, so this is something you need to factor in as you're planning your return to work. Okay, that's it. That was everything you need to know about how to find a Kita in Berlin. You can reach out to me with questions anytime. I will also link our dedicated channel for Kita search questions in our online community, which you're welcome to use and ask for feedback and advice as you're going through this process. And you can also always ask other members or myself at meetups with particular challenges that you are experiencing. So hopefully this was helpful. Let us know any questions, and good luck. You've got this and you will be successful.